Greetings, my fellow travelers. My name is Xylo, your cosmic narrator, and this is Higher Strangeness. Thank you for joining me. It's been a wild ride so far this year. Lots of important pieces being moved around the board. So tonight, I would like to begin with the question, how free are we really? Is it truly possible that trillions of tax dollars have gone missing with no accountability? Or has that money been used to subsidize paint it black buddy programs and secret off-world and underground domains? We're going to take a look at black budgets, the secret space program, this current viral disaster, by design, and lastly, we're going to compare the difference between rights, which you don't have, and privileges, which you do have. But before we tunnel too deep into those topics, let's smoke about it. The flower I'm luxuriating in tonight is called Gelato number 33. Maybe a few of you will catch the reference. This weed is a really well-balanced hybrid born out of the cookie family, a cross between sunset sherbet and thin mint. A little fruity, a little citrusy, just a really great uplifting post-day high, which I definitely need right now. So without further ado, consider this. It's called the American Dream, 'cause you have to be asleep to believe it. George Carlin. I've always thought of America in much the same way I think of a Las Vegas spectacle. The perfect illusion, one with unparalleled sleight of hand, artfully deceiving you out of your time, energy, money, your mind. And all along, you knew the show was rigged, mirrors and trapdoors, but you just kept on watching through the long work hours and depression, the debt and distractions, your ambitions, your fears. You kept on putting in coins and pulling that lever, hoping that one day you might just make it backstage. But then, even if you do make it that far, where would you go from there? What will you aspire to achieve? You're still playing their game. You're just not in Vegas anymore. You're on a new strip, only this time it's called Wall Street. And old Fed over there, he's the pit boss. Imagine a king, or a monarchy for that matter. A structure of rule that is not required to answer to anyone other than itself. The kind of governing rule we have been attempting to withdraw from for centuries. Now, imagine a democracy with capitalist sensibilities, run by the people, for the people, with inalienable rights and complete financial transparency. Finally, imagine a third option, a puppet show. This one in particular is about government, a spectacle carefully rehearsed to distract you enough into believing that you actually have freedom of choice. But behind the curtains is a much different kind of performance. One where massive global corporations, like cartels, write the scripts, fund the narratives, and determine the rule of law. And that, my friends, is called a plutocratic oligarchy. If you truly believe you are living in a free capitalist society, then it is clearly time for you to wake up from the American dream. The deep state, cryptocracy, shadow government, Bernays was partial to the invisible government. Whatever your preference, personally, I call it a plutocracy. It exists. It is very alive and doing exceptionally well, thanks to trillions of your tax dollars. These deep state cartels have been re-engineering our government and financial institutions for a very long time. Big pharma, big banks, big energy, big ag, all interested in only one thing: controlling your mind. When it comes down to it, government is simply an abandonment of responsibility on the assumption that there are people, other than ourselves, who really know how to manage things. But the government, run ostensibly for the good of the people, becomes a self-serving corporation. Alan Watts. Back in October of 2018, while most of the population was distracted by the Brett Kavanaugh fiasco over there, a few of us over here were transfixed on a little policy called Standard 56. A policy that I guarantee 99.999% of the citizens of the United States have never even heard of. By signing Standard 56, Congress pretty much rescinded all of its remaining responsibilities under the Constitution. They took the entire securities market dark, which means they can award your tax dollars to pretty much any government organization or corporation they're corrupted by, and you will never be the wiser. A complete obfuscation of financial reporting. And when it comes time for audits, those line items can omit any and all liability as to where the funds actually landed. Poof, just like that. With a stroke of the pen, Congress sacrifices the purse. They abdicated their powers. It's over, folks. Remember this? Quote, according to some estimates, we cannot track 2.3 trillion in transactions, end quote. That was our U.S. Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, exactly one day before 9/11. Talk about timing. Now, I don't really care what your definition of track is or how you might like to spin this. The fact remains, there was over $2 trillion in the ether. And 24 hours later, no one cared. And the world was a very different place. And that was 20 years ago. Just the outer layer of that onion. Imagine how much more has gone untracked since then. Well, we don't have to. We know it's well over 21 trillion and counting. One distraction after another. 9/11, fear, terrorism, more fear, the Great Recession, abject fear, global warming, divisive fear, COVID-19, viral fear, so to speak. And next, the Great Suppression, absolute panic. All while fed, the pit boss who routinely disappears to the back room keeps an eye on your assets. See where I'm headed? Do you really know what the fuck is going on? If anyone ever tells you that you're buying a risk-free security, I want you to run as fast as you can. Risk-free securities, they ain't risk-free, folks. So there it is, the latest show from Congress du Soleil. And for their next act, they'll be issuing securities backed by taxpayers and pensions. Parenthetically, that's an IOU to yourself, while funneling money out the back door to the DoD, privatized aerospace and security companies like Lockheed and Northrop, and tech corps, namely Amazon and Microsoft, who conveniently control the cloud that 17 intel agencies use, including our very own Pentagon and the CIA. Let all that soak in for a second. Your government has given up complete control to corporate infrastructure, and you can't trace one penny of it. You know what they say? The devil is in the data. Oh, and let's not forget about the CDC, chartered by Congress, yet co-funded by Big Pharma, such as Gilead, GlaxoSmithKline, Merck, Pfizer. Corporations who not only cram thousands of dangerously addictive drugs down your throat, but also the very same companies who produce all those vaccines they want to mandate. At this point, you have to ask yourself, is my government good for anything anymore? Other than lowbrow entertainment, fraudulent enterprises, and, dare I say, slow, sweeping acts of genocide? So where is the money? Well, you'll never get a straight answer, so don't even think about it. We didn't cancel our long-term space program to visit the moon and other planets after the moon landings back in the late 60s and early 70s. The programs just went dark. 50 years of black budget research and development into alternative crafts, some engineered from extraterrestrial technologies, fused with our own, of course, alternative energies, namely ones that are free and clean, and massive amounts poured into planetary colonies, outposts, and further explorations. And I'm not just talking about space. We're talking about projects and policies that are way beyond what the general public is capable of conceiving, let alone digesting. For decades, our tax dollars have been siphoned off to subsidize off-world and underground habitats. And the powerful cartels that have been building those settlements are the same cartels in league with our government. The same cartels that have been awarded our tax dollars without our consent. What they are building on the backs of propaganda and indentured labor is the next step in our evolution. The catch is, I don't think we're invited. So does that mean we all have shares in those spaceships and black budget programs? Well, don't hold your breath. I don't think anyone is ever going to see that money again. And you won't care. Because now there's a virus and a shrinking economy and a grand solar minimum. And how will you feed your family? We were already eking by on certain food reserves. 2019 wasn't at all kind to our crops. And we're probably going to see last year on repeat. Couple that with supply chain disruptions, a paralyzing pandemic, and a grotesquely diabetic market, and you spell out one word: Frankenstorm. The perfect monster stitched together by the ghost of global warming, a pandemic, quarantines, food shortages, a drowning economy, and finally, the specter of death. But this time, the phantom of the apocalypse can touch anyone, anywhere. A creature even Shelley would be frightened of. Welcome to the world of beatdown tactics, practiced and perfected on minorities for centuries, and now you too will begin to empathize. Break someone's spirit, and you can break all their resistances down. Ever hear of Operation Mockingbird? It was a program developed by the CIA in order to infiltrate and manipulate the media for the purpose of propaganda. It was extraordinarily successful. Something that effective, you think it ended? Like everything else, they just painted it a darker shade of black. And we're probably still footing the bill. How many of you have heard of the Smith-Mundt Act? It was advantageously repealed in 2013. Do you even know what that means? If you don't, you should probably look it up. As long as they ensure their subjects are poor, weak, divided, and afraid, they will never lose control. There is one word, however, out of those four that is an absolute essentiality for their plan to be successful. The word is divided. Remove divided, and you have revolt. Quote, "It's time to give the elites a bigger say in choosing the president." End quote. Boy. That was the headline from an article written in, get this, the Washington Post back in February. Of course, it was quickly redacted and replaced, but not before the whole world gleaned it. You don't even need to read the article because it basically reinforces the hubris that the single sentence headline boasts. That's it. Give your money to the elite and let them choose your president. Oh, and by the way, fuck your democracy. Let's just keep on plucking our candidates from the same putrefied presidential petri dish. Julia Azari, I read your article, but you're a little late to the races. It was actually more humorous reading the comments and the backlash caused by the article because most of it was an outcry against an ideology that is already very well established in our politics. Now, I don't know much about Julia, but I do know quite a bit about the Washington Post. It just feels to me at this point, this plutocratic cartel is proudly wearing their agenda on their lapel. After Operation Mockingbird, it was the Next World Order, and then it was the Patriot Act, then Too Big to Fail, the revocation of the Smith-Mundt Act, the escalation of the global warming agenda, Standard 56, Bill Gates Event 201, the George Soros-funded food chain reaction, and now a deep, dark economic depression, unlike any you will ever see again. They have us exactly where they want us. If our government can be so easily manipulated and corrupted, then it should be evident to everyone. The only resolution is deconstruction. Without reliable accountability, we do not have a democracy. We as citizens cannot, with good faith, vote for representatives if we do not know where the money's being allocated. Quote, "All governments suffer a reoccurring problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. It is not that power corrupts, but that it is magnetic to the corruptible." Frank Herbert, one of my all-time favorite authors. So my epilogue. What are your rights? Do you actually have them? Or are they just privileges, ones that are slowly dwindling away as each decadal catastrophe unfurls? Because last I checked, you can't take away someone's rights. Never underestimate your government for using incompetence as a scapegoat during a crisis. you'll see it happen almost every time. And with each crisis, you'll read new laws. And with each new law, you'll lose more and more freedoms. Until you reach a point where almost all your freedoms are phantoms. And you didn't even recognize what was happening because you were so concerned with making enough money to feed your family and pay your medical bills that you just didn't have time to get involved. But thank God for Amazon and Netflix. Bloomberg had a headline this March that read as follows, quote, "Coronavirus will change how we shop, travel, and work for years," end quote. They should have said forever. They're already preparing you for what they plan on doing to you. More of your, quote, rights will be taken away, probably even before this whole debacle concludes. And I bet most Americans won't even notice, or worse, they will excuse their government for taking away their freedoms in the name of safety and convenience. The exemplary Orwellian civilization, stupid, hardworking, and complacent. And so it all circles back to why. Why would they do this to us? What purpose does it all serve? Are they creating a new global government? Or is all this subterfuge for the purpose of developing a solar governing body, or even a galactic one? A novel government that has no terrestrial accountability whatsoever. Our laws and ethics may not apply to theirs. Modern day pilgrims settling new worlds, drafting new laws, reaping new resources. Sound familiar? Now, I stand behind my last video. I said the real economic depression will stem from food shortages, and I still believe it will. Controlling the food supply gives the plutocracy almost unlimited power over the populace. COVID-19 is merely a catalyst and a duplicitous excuse to crush the economy earlier rather than later. It was going to fall soon anyway, but what better way to cover your tracks than with a cheat? Now, the other pieces are going to start moving much faster and more cleverly. Just in time for that grand solar minimum, which will, over the next decade, compound everything. And let's not forget the magnetic pole shift and our waning magnetosphere, which we still need to cover. That's a doozy unto itself. The cartel's gotta hustle, man. They're running out of time to nationalize and martialize before the real shit starts hitting the fan. I cannot say it emphatically enough. Brace yourselves, folks. This is just the beginning. Get out of the city. Grow your own food. Find a clean and reliable source of water. Become part of a small community that can help one another. Brush up on survivalism. Find new ways, create new ways, and most importantly, meditate. If you don't already, start now. The next 10 years are going to be epic, in bad ways and good. These inexorable changes are coming, like it or not. So instead of panicking or fearing them, prepare for them. Only your psyche will determine how well you weather the coming tempest. Quote, "The plutocracy has all power in its hands today. It today makes the laws, for it owns the Senate, Congress, the courts, and the state legislatures. And not only that, behind law must be forced to execute law. Today, the plutocracy makes the law, and to enforce the law it has at its beck and call, the police, the army, the navy, and lastly, the militia, which is you and me and all of us. Jack London, The Iron Heel, published in 1908. So you're probably asking yourself, what nug of knowledge am I going to get tonight? What factoid can I pack into my pipe that will lull me to sleep off to that American dream? Well, I'm here to give you a good one. In 1933, the United States effectively abandoned the gold standard. And in 1971, we completely amputated it. So what is the gold standard? Well, it's a monetary system that directly links a currency's value to that of an agreed upon measure. In the case of the United States and most of the world, that was always gold. By having a currency attached to gold, a country cannot increase the amount of money in circulation without also increasing its reserves. Furthermore, because supply moves like a turtle, being on a gold standard holds government spending and inflation in check. Think of the gold standard as a debit card and our current monetary system as a limitless credit card with a very high interest rate. We currently live with what is called a fiat money system, backed by absolutely 100% nothing. Now, that first semi-departure from the gold standard, that happened in response to, guess what? The Great Depression. And who was one of the instruments key in the repudiation of those gold securities? Well, the Rothschilds, of course. I mean, the same family who launched gold fixing in 1919 and kept at it for over 80 years. But let's not forget what Roosevelt did. He ordered the entire country to hand over their gold to the government at $20 an ounce, or get a $10,000 fine or up to 10 years imprisonment. And as expected at the time, I mean, most loyal, trusting Americans did just that. A year later, after acquiring literally thousands of tons of gold, old Frankie raised the price to $35 an ounce. That trail of gold breadcrumbs also leads to the Rockefellers and a number of other banking cartels. And the final departure in 71, well, we were just tired of foreigners attenuating our reserves. I can probably just explain it in one word: greed. So the big question is, what will be the next iteration of this devaluation? In just the last few weeks alone, our government has begun buying up innumerable amounts of private equity with unlimited firepower. If you set the prices and control the prices, well, that's called nationalization. The same kind of tomfoolery we've seen in China and other communist regimes. When our country begins to go hungry, what freedoms will we relinquish in the name of survivalism? I think we're on the precipice of that chasm at this very moment. I just hope you all brought your hang gliders, because this is going to be a very, very steep collapse. I want to leave you with a quote about the Federal Reserve, a private enterprise fabricated back in 1913 by a cabal of just a handful of very affluential bankers and government officials. These monetary mobsters surreptitiously planned the creation of a central banking cartel, one which could, in theory, create money out of thin air. Quote, "Some people think that the Federal Reserve banks are United States government institutions. They are private monopolies which prey upon the people of these United States for the benefit of themselves and their foreign customers, foreign and domestic speculators and swindlers, and rich and predatory moneylenders. In that dark crew of financial pirates, there are those who would cut a man's throat to get $1 out of his pocket. There are those who send money into states to buy votes to control our legislatures. There are those who maintain international propaganda for the purpose of deceiving us into granting of new concessions which will permit them to cover up their past misdeeds and set again in motion their gigantic train of crime. Representative Louis McFadden, 1934. Now, to throw that into clearer context, let me give you one more for the road. Quote, I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire. The man who controls the British money supply controls the British Empire. And I control the British money supply. Nathan Rothschild, at the time, the wealthiest man on earth. Pack that in your pipe and smoke it. I would like to thank my art collective and colleagues here at Music of Wolves, my black budget posse. Earth, our ecological campaign focused on independent communities. Magic, casting our spell on cannabis. Vimana, and finally Scorpio, our musical humanoid from another planetoid. Like them, I am here to share, advise, and to help you prepare for what is coming, all the while attempting to entertain you during the process, which I hope I was successful in doing. Please like, subscribe, and share. We are a spirited community of artists and practitioners who humbly hold out our hats. Dona Dago Hai, or until we meet again.